if we want to acknowledge these symptoms, what are the symptoms we should be watching out for?
As we mentioned earlier, now firstly we have an appropriate mood changes, sadness and anger and grief. And if these sort of emotions pass as the situations tend to pass. In a situation of lockdown, there's uncertainty continues, and the situation changing on daily basis continues. So the pressure upon us of not knowing quite what is happening, the pressure of the unknown continues. So we're going to continue to experience the mood, and as long as we keep tapping into it and we start to feel better. In other words, if our sadness and our reactions are patchy, not on a daily basis, then that is an understandable human emotion. If the sadness and the grief lingers, if it continues to last beyond a number of days, if it's present on a daily basis, every morning you wake up feeling sad and negative, every morning you feel gloomy, even after having a good night's sleep, you wake up to feeling amotivated, you wake up to not having much interest and enthusiasm in doing simple routines of life. If you have had a very disturbed night of sleep with a lot of anxious dreams, if you woken up early in the morning than your usual time, for example, if you normally get up at 7 and woke up 2 hours earlier, like 5 o'clock in the morning, that's early waking for no specific reasons. If you lose appetite and pleasure in eating the food, especially when you're foodie, if you're feeling tired and exhausted, even having spent all day at home, if those feelings along with the continuous sadness of mood last, then you should have alarm bells ringing whether this is now more than blues and is turning into depression.
Question, Dr. Roshan. A lot of these symptoms that you mentioned, be it stress or fear or sleeplessness or loss of appetite, let's say, I speak for all of the audience, let's say a lot of these emotions are the ones we usually feel otherwise also. How do we know that it is no longer normal and I need to do something about it? Where do we draw the line?
You draw the line on two things in terms of the number of these features that I talked about, the severity of these features, and how it affects your functioning and day-to-day life. So in a normal or a understandable sad mood, you can get on with your life. So you feel sad, but you get on with doing things. But in a depression, your life and your functioning is affected. Your ability to attend to things, your ability to work from home, your ability to attend to your children, your ability to attend to your rest and relaxation and entertainment is taken away. So it affects your day-to-day life in such a way that even when you try to make an effort, you're not able to get out of it. You're pulled in, and it's as though something is holding you back. You're not able to come out of it. And all these features and feelings of continuous mood would last for at least 1 to 2 weeks continuously. That's when you start to say that you're just not able to come out of it, and that's when it becomes depression, and that's when you need to take advice and help.
This is something that's happening to most of us, and a lot of times we are dodging these symptoms and signs, thinking that this is how probably it's going to be, or a lot of times we are worried, why is this happening? The list of the symptoms that you've mentioned, be it stress, fear about the uncertainty of future. Somebody has typed in the chat box about finance, how to keep finance out of our head right now during lockdown. What they're talking about is the economical impact that all of us are going to face or already facing. So we all, I think, pretty much know what the symptoms are. And now that you've explained that the persistence of these symptoms for a longer duration, and the moment they start, interfering with our normal functionality is when the alarm bells should ring. Sure. And I think sleeplessness is something about sleep also is very, very crucial in the conversation that you've mentioned. Now, coming to the important question here, like a lot of the audience who are chatting on the chat box and the conversation we were having earlier, Dr. Roshan, a lot of us already know that we are experiencing these symptoms. The poll showed we said yes to a lot of them. But I think after once we acknowledge ourselves, one issue that stops us from, sharing it with our loved ones or family, now that in lockdown we are all, with our families, to talk to, a spouse or a family member or a parent, or for that matter, reach out to an expert like you for help. One thing that stops us is the stigma around it. And talking about stigma, I'm talking about Indian context. Mental health, issues of mental health, and acknowledging and talking about them is not a very pretty sight, and it's not taken very well. And I am being honest here. So how do we fight that stigma? What do we do? This could be your answer to Dr. Naveen also.
Uh, I think the stigma of mental health problems, but also stigma of in the olden days tuberculosis, stigma of cancer, stigma of developing various ailments in India has existed for as long as we know. Uh, but I think a lot is changed now because our ways of thinking, our ways of acknowledging our emotions has also changed. Uh, there is a lot of demands on all of us. Therefore, we are now realizing that if anything is affecting our functioning, then we need to take remedial actions. If you have a back problem, you look into the back problem because you need to get on to work and exercise and so on. Likewise, if you have emotional problems, you need to address it. We've always lived in such a way that we feel as though our bodies exist, our appearances exist, as though our mind doesn't exist at all. And we've given so much emphasis to social hygiene and physical hygiene. We've never given enough emphasis to emotional hygiene, and that's changing. So, for example, I've been in India for last 10 years, and in the last 10 years, there's been a dramatic shift in how people pursue and perceive psychiatry. And for example, previously I would get a lot of cross referrals from the likes of my anesthetic colleague to say that, I have a patient, but they don't want to see you. But would you, can you just not tell them that you're a psychiatrist and still see
Really?
them? Oh, yeah, yeah. And, on many occasions, I used to tell them, yeah, okay, fine. I'll never tell them I'm a psychiatrist. As the patient walks in, I will introduce myself as I'm Dr. Roshan Jain. I'm a senior psychiatrist here. and and I would ask them, have you ever seen a psychiatrist before? And they would say no. And I said, well, from today, after today, you can tell people that you have seen a psychiatrist, and that's Roshan Jain. And I can tell you that when people come and see me, or people go and see a psychiatrist, the most common feedback is that they never been heard as much as by any other doctors. Their problems were heard, whether any solutions were given or not. The problems were heard, they felt heard, and they felt appreciated, and they felt acknowledged. And the same patient, for example, who never wanted to get into psychiatric chamber, now would only come to hospital if I was available. Even if they have other appointment, they'll say that link that with this doctor's appointment because I want to see him first and then do other things. So perceptions change, and we call people that we see, people that we help out are our foot soldiers. They're going and doing the hearsay. They're going out and telling people to say that I had a problem, I struggled, and I sought help and I got better. And just going back to one more point, when I was working in England, people would seek help at the very earlier on. In 2 weeks of panic attacks or 1 week of anxiety, they would seek help. In India, often we hear people talking about they've been stressed for a year, they've been panicking for 2 years. It's just mind-boggling to say that people have taken that long, they've suffered for that long unnecessarily. And as people realize that, they're coming more and more forward. There are a lot of cultural factors, and there are a lot of other biological factors. We are body driven. Our country is completely body driven. If it's not visible, if it's not a identifiable illness, if it doesn't appear broken, then it does not exist. And that is gradually changing. And I think with the talks like this and with the lockdown, we will start to recognize that there is something called an emotion that also exists within us, and those emotions need to be maintained, and it also need hygiene, just like our hand wash.
There is so much being said and written about the current crisis.
Yeah.
Social media is going crazy. The print media has gone crazy, and everywhere there is so much of data and news, and it changes every second.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this, and also both of them have mentioned, one is social media. Second, I think Joel was mentioning about now that we have so much more time, people are spending a lot more time on these games and, certain apps and, video apps, like whatever. I do not want to take the name, but online games and all of that.
Yeah.
Do you think all of this also adds to this?
Two things I think is a very, very important point, and I think Dr. Joel and my colleague has taken us to intervention. And one of the first things that I always advise is that, not just in lockdown status, when we are feeling sad and gloomy or depressed, what do? We acknowledge and accept our emotions, which we talked about, but we need to identify the source of our negative energy and negative vibrations and try to either reduce that or get rid of it. And the source of our negative energy and vibrations could be toxic people, could be people who put us down, could be people who want us to see suffer. So we get rid of those people, and fortunately, we don't have that at the moment because we are now, segregated and separated. So a lot of toxicity might have been taken away, but now the toxicity now largely exists on social media. we are facing an infodemic, and WHO quite nicely describe infodemic as large amount of information about a problem, which makes it impossible to look out for solutions.
Right.
And that information overload always existed even before lockdown. We were getting so much information about everything, about minute by minute updates about everything, that it was almost becoming unnecessary and unbearable. And to me, at least, I think social media is absolute rubbish. And during the lockdown, we're getting so much confusing information and news that it becomes so overwhelming that you just have to shut it out. And one of the principal advice I give to people is to reduce this source of negativity from your life, is to cut down social media use, to stop sharing news to other people. WhatsApp themselves have controlled it to say you can't share a news to or a corona related information to more than one person now.
Yeah.
And they've shown that there's been a 60% drop in use of social media in terms of forwarding. So that's a significant drop, and I hope that they continue to do that, because we're just getting overwhelmed. What I suggest to people is that cut down social media use to a very minimal amount of time a day to connect with people that matter. Don't participate in too much group discussions. Cut down the news intake from any sources. Only use one or two good sources. Arogya Setu. So today I was looking at the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare website. It's just fantastic. I was telling my father-in-law, because he looks at a lot of news, that you need to look at the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare website. It has so much clear information. It's unbelievable. So WHO.international or mygov.in. So you look at those information, 5-10 minutes of morning updates, after your breakfast, not early in the morning, and then a little bit of update in the evening, so that you're at least just informed, not overwhelmed. So you need to get away from that. I think I lost the track of the second part of the question. Have I answered that?
Yeah, it's got to do with online gaming, I think, because now that everybody is stuck at home, and so people can't stand each other for a long time, so they have to stick to
so gaming is good, and gaming is engaging, but I think the problem with our human tendencies is that we cannot do little bit of anything. We just engage doing a lot, and too much is always bad. Buddha has taught us, many thousands of years ago, that we need to take the middle path, to don't get into any excesses. If it's video game, relax. You won't believe, I was playing that one of the online multiplayer gaming just before the talk. My son was saying that play with me for 15 minutes, and that's quite relaxing. So play to relax, play to engage with your family, with your son, but play it for a limited period of time. It should not become the principal things that you do in a day.
Right.